Well, here with me today is Mavis Amankwah of mavisamankwah.com. And Mavis and I are going to have a chat about money, business, loans, grants, all those things you need to think about if you have a business idea, or you want to scale up your business. So just before we get started, Mavis, tell us a little bit about you and how you know so much about this area.
Hi, Paula. Thanks for having me. Yes, my name is Mavis Amankwah, and I'm a serial entrepreneur, multi-award winning entrepreneur that's been running business for 19 years. I know about this industry because when I first started business, I kind of started off in diversity marketing, and over the years, after surviving two recessions, I was looking at multiple streams of income and came across the opportunity where I saw a gap in the market that businesses needed to access funding and finance and didn't know how. So, my experience and knowledge has come from years of experience of my own kind of physical pain in terms of, finance and not being able to secure finance as and when I need it, especially when it comes to cash flow. And then secondly, seeing a gap in the market to help businesses who do not understand about the funding and finance available to them.
Brilliant. So, my own experience of business is I very much have always bootstrapped. I've always self-funded, got to a certain level, and then spent a bit more cash. I'm not particularly great at taking risks. I always like to cover my back, cover my tracks. um, but I mean, obviously, there are some times when you do need to get that funding or that investment, because otherwise you just can't scale up, or you just can't get launched. So, I mean, when, in your opinion, is a good time to go for that funding, and when is it a good time not to?
Okay, that is a $1 million question.
Mm.
I think the first thing people need to realize is, first of all, are they ready for business in terms of business is very up and down. I always say to people, if you've been on a roller coaster, then you know what it's like. It is a up and down kind of ride where you need to be able to weather the storms, and you also need to really understand that there are lots of rewards in business as well, but at the same time, there are lots of storms. So one needs to decide, first of all, if they're ready to weather these type of storms, because it is a challenging time, especially now. And then secondly, one needs to also look at calculated risk. I never tell people go and start a business and don't take calculated risk, because depending on the business that you're trying to do, it depends on how much money you need, the tools you need, and so forth. But I think most importantly, one thing is that a lot of people start business out of passion,
Mm.
which is great. But is that passion going to make you profit? Is it going to be profitable for you? Because we have this, light bulb moment, and we feel like, oh, this is really great, and we run with it, and sometimes we don't have a business plan.
Yeah.
So I always say to people, excuse me, whatever you're doing, have some form of plan. Okay, we can see the vision and mission, the purpose, but what is the business plan? So once you've got the business plan in terms of, and I put it simple, I'm coming over to your house today to visit you. I've never been there before. I don't know the direction. I don't know how to get there, but I'm going to rely on my sat nav to bring me there. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to be coming in my car, and my car, I need to make sure all my tires are fine, because you live really far away from me. I need to make sure I've got enough gas, and water and all the things. So the first thing is, once you've identified, how you're going to plan it, what the idea is, you also need to take into consideration, is it a good time in terms of the market? Is it a good time to start a business in terms of the economic market? The business you want to start, the industry or sector, is it in growth or is it in decline? You really need to do some real background research, first of all, to just understand the business that you're trying to do. Apart from having a passion, it's about the seriousness of the business and the scale and the scope of the business. You also need to look at yourself as a person. Like, am I a person that can take a lot of stress? Do I like an easy life? I'm just being very real, because I think people see me and think, oh yeah, see you and think, yeah, wonderful business ladies, but they don't see the kind of the work that goes behind the scenes.
Hard,
So
hard
I
to
think,
get.
yeah,
Yeah.
there isn't a good time per se, but I think most importantly, it's about taking calculated risks, being ready. I think it's a bit like when people say, oh, when should we get married, or when should we have children? And you just can't always plan it, but you need to have some form of plan, if that makes sense, especially when it comes to finance. So once you've got a business plan, you've got your vision, your mission, some direction, you've got fuel in your car, you've got your car, you've got fuel, you've got water, you've got oil, and all of the things that you need to kick off, then it is about, okay, right now I'm ready. And I think when you're talking about bootstrapping, I think bootstrapping is really good, but again, it depends on your vision. Maybe your vision is just to have a very small business at home, stay at home, and just have you just working on the business, and depending on the industry and sector, fine. But some people may want to have a big global company that they want to open so many offices, they want to literally go really, really big and global, then that would need a lot more funding. And it also depends on how quick you want to get there. How quickly do you want to get there? Do you want to say, right, for the first 2, 3 years, I'm going to be doing this by myself and bring on a team later on? Or are you going to bring in the team from the earlier days? And that's all got to do with funding as well. So it's really good to make sure that you have a real full detailed shopping list of what you need to get the business started and kicked off. And then secondly, to continue and sustain that business over a period of time.
Mm. So, I mean, I know there are various routes to funding, aren't there? Do you want to take us through some of the main ones?
Yes, there are various routes to funding, but what I would say as an entrepreneur or someone that wants to start their business, one of the main things is that a lot of people come up to me as a business specialist and a coach and someone who's been business for, nearly 2 decades. Grants. When people come to me and say, I need a grant to start my business, I tell them straight, you're not ready for a business,
Mm.
because you cannot get a grant to start a business and expect things to happen. You have to literally look at the financial aspect in terms of what you have to put in. A lot of people want to get finance, they want to get funding, they want to get grants, they want people to invest in their business. If you go to an investor and say, look, I want £100,000, and they say to you, have you started this business before? No. Have you got any money to put in? No. Then why should the investor invest in you? Because at the end of the day, you've got nothing to show. You're not putting your own investment. And I think this is where people go wrong. So I always say to people, when you're starting a business, always have some type of pilot, some type of launch, soft launch, prototype. Try it out first and see. Once you've done a prototype and you've gone and you've seen, okay, this can work, that's when you can look at funding, because you need evidence. Everyone needs evidence. If I said to you, Paula, give me your last £1 million, and you say, right, why am I giving it to you? And I've got no plan, no direction, I'm not putting anything in, you're going to say, I'm not sure about this. So always in your mind, just think about everything that you want to do in terms of investment. The question is, if I give you my money, whether it's a lender, whether it's a private investor or a family friend, am I going to get the money back? So the first things first is, in the UK, there is only one lending opportunity, which is startup funding to start off. And that is about £25,000, up to £25,000 to kick off your business. Now, there is a criteria that you need to follow. You also need to find out if you're eligible for this. And there are a number of factors that you would need to actually go for startup funding, such as a business plan, a
Mm.
cash flow forecast, some type of evidence that you've done this business before and some sort of money has been made. You also need to make sure that you yourself, your kind of personal credit is in check, because with most businesses that start off, there's no evidence to show that this is a good business or not a good business. So sometimes when they're trying to look at lending, they look at your personal circumstances in terms of, okay, how are you going to bring in money? What are you doing apart from running a business? And most people will ask for a backup plan. If this business doesn't go well, how do we get our money back?
Yeah.
So you need to have a contingency plan as well. You also need to have a good profile about yourself, what you've done. It sounds funny. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and because I do a lot of startup funding, I say, oh, we need your CV. And they're like, I don't run my own business. I don't have a CV. And I said, well, you need that for the funder, because the funder wants to see the history of who you are, what you've done over the years. Because most people that start a business, they've normally been in a normal 9 to 5 job. They've got kind of years of experience in different areas, whether it's admin, management, or specific niche. So you need to have a CV or profile, whether it's your LinkedIn profile. It's very important you have all these things in place as well. Your financials in terms of your cash flow needs to be done needs to be very accurate, even though it's a forecast, but the figures need to make sense. It needs to be smart, making sure that, if someone says, right, I want to make £1 million in, 6 months, is that realistic? So all of these things need to be taken in place before you can apply for the funding. You need to have all of this in place before you actually apply, because you will get asked lots of questions. So you need to make sure that you've got all your house in order, you've done all your homework, and then you can apply for funding. Once you've got that, then you can apply for the different startup funding, whether it's going to be through your bank, or it's going to be through government finance, or private investment, or from family and friends, depending when. But these are all the things that you would need, because questions will be asked, and you need to be prepared to show transparency about your business, and also at the same time to show that it's a feasible and viable business that's going to work.
Mm, mm. So you said about having made some money through the business. What are we talking about here? A couple of £100, or are we talking about maybe into the thousands and showing that something's going on?
Well, it really depends on the industry. I mean, if it's cupcakes, it's, a very small amount of money with a really nice portfolio of all your cakes displayed, people that you've sold to, and so forth. That's different.
Mm,
That's like on a very small scale. But if it's something to do with technology, some form of app, then you need to show, what you've done as your prototype. You would have to show some form of evidence, whether it's people have bought into it, or if they've invested in it, or you've got some type of pre-orders, if you like, to show that, right, this is the app that I've got, this is how much people are going to pay for it. So it depends. I mean, when it's products, it's a lot more easier because you've got evidence, you can touch, feel, it's tangible. When it's services, it's a little bit different as well. And again, it depends. If it's a niche industry, then and it's a niche industry that makes a lot of money, then you need to show some form of example. And one of the things you can do to kind of be able to kind of benchmark, if you like, is to look at competitors, look at people
mm,
that are similar to, what you're doing, have a look at the competitors. You can look at things like company accounts, how much have they made, how are they doing. You can look at their website. There's so much evidence and research that you could do. You could go to the British Library, find out about the industry, and sector. And so there are so many ways, but it's more about looking at showing that you are the right person for lending. And
mm.
also at the same time, let's be honest, the lender would need their money back.
Yeah,
So you need to be able to show that evidently that you can get their money back within a certain period of time.
yeah. Which brings me to the question. So, in my head, I see two types of lender. There's the sort of bank type lenders that they want their money back with interest, but you still retain, all the decision making, every part of the company. And there are those investors who both want money and they want a bit of the company as well.
Hmm.
Am I
Hmm.
right in separating those two? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. You need to separate the two. And it's going back to that question of what's the vision and the mission and the purpose of what you're trying to do. Because some people are happy to say, right, I bring an investor on board and I'm happy to give away 40% of shares and so forth. Or someone might say, no, I just want to keep this all to myself and I want to go down a startup funding loan route where I'll go and get my own loan and, literally just start and see how it goes.
Mm,
Or you want an investor and there's different investors, of course. There's investors that will just come on board and go, here's the money. They're a silent investor, you get on with it. Or you can have investors that say, right, I also want to be part of this. Apart from having shares, I want to be part of the day-to-day operations to help you to grow. Just a bit like the Dragon's Den, where you go into the den and you pitch, and then they take some shares, and they also they have contacts, and they can help you through because they have experience.
mm. So if you go down the other route, either bank funding or, as you mentioned, government startup funding, is there any access to help and support there, or is that purely transactional money?
Okay, well, with the banks, depending on the banks, there is some form of support, whether it's just going on to their training courses, their webinars, and once you kind of open a bank account with them and go for funding, they normally have a lot of events online that can help you through, whether it's cash flow, business planning, marketing, sales, and a lot of that is available from the bank through their special programs that are designed for small businesses and startups. And then with startup funding, with some of the funding, they do offer some form of mentorship. So, they would offer you a mentor for 6 months or 1 year that will help you to grow as well. So it really, really depends on what kind of route you go down and which industry and sector that you're in. And every one is different. It's on a case by case basis as well.
Yeah. So it's worth looking, yeah, looking at what are the additional things that come with your funding. Yeah.
Exactly, and you need to look at the pros and cons. In all honesty, I mean, I do believe in bootstrapping businesses, but I also believe that you know if you need that funding to get there a little bit quicker,
Mm.
depending on what you're doing, then that also helps because I've seen a lot of solo entrepreneurs, if you call them, where they're doing okay, but they're literally struggling because they're trying to firefight, put out all the fires and work every single day and work on business development and do their social media. And you will become burnt out.
Yeah.
So I'm a strong believer of if you have a plan and you can bring in a team and you can get the funding and the finance to get there quicker and, you know, to me that makes sense, and I'm not saying that solo entrepreneurship is a bad thing, but we also need to think about you're human just like me and you, and things happen. The you need to stay at home because you're not feeling well or you've got
Mm.
some family commitments. Things happen along the way, and when you're a solo entrepreneur and you've got no team, you've got no one guiding you, no consultants, you could easily burn out. And when you burn out, you're not going to be able to get any help because you know everything in here, you haven't got a team.
Yeah.
So I think it's really essential that people also take that on board, especially with things like loans, because loans and all of these things come with their own pressures and their own measures. If no money comes in for that particular month because you didn't sell 200 cupcakes, you can't tell the lender that the loan still has to be paid. So you need to look at the pros and cons of lending and funding, very carefully and say if is that for me.
Mm. Mm. Because I know you help a lot of people get business loans, don't you? So this is
Yes.
something you talk to them about.
Yes, yes. So,
Yeah.
so over the last 5 years, so as I said to you, when I first started out, I was doing diverse communications,
Mm.
and then I kind of divulged into helping people with funding and finance and marketing as well. But what I was seeing is that people just were not understanding what was available to them. So I sit down with people and I say, look, these are all the options. This is what you need to go for. Go away, have a think, and then come back and let me know what you want. And normally, 8 times out of 10 people will come forward. We have done about 700 businesses in the last 6 years. I'm proud to say we've done about £7 million worth of funding, and these are small startups. Anything from about 5 grand up to about 25, 15,000.
Mm.
We do help with startups, and we also help with people who want to expand as well. They've been going for a while, and they want to kind of go take their business to the next level as well. So there are opportunities available, but when it comes to startups, there isn't many. So it is about really being cautious and at the same time taking calculated risk, and also understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are as an entrepreneur. You may be really good at English and and communication and social media, but you may not be good at cash flow and accounting and bookkeeping, and you need to identify those things from the beginning so you can bring the right people on board that can cover those gaps for you.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is, before you do anything, get a minimum viable product going, or test drive your business in some way.
Correct.
Get a CV together, your LinkedIn page, portfolio of work, as much material as you've got to show them almost your gravitas and who you are. Do your research in that industry. Know who your competitors are. Know whether that industry has a future.
Yes,
So perhaps something in travel right at the moment is not a great place to
exactly.
invest. Um, and know your figures. And this is a bit that often I know with my clients in the past often confuses them because they have a great idea for a business, but it's all projections. They say, oh, it feels like guessing, feels like guessing. So any tips on how, to go about forecasting a cash flow or.
Yes, definitely. When it comes to forecasting and cash flow and accounting, if that is not your area of expertise, and I say this in all industries, get out the experts or speak to the experts because they have got that experience, skill, and expertise. So I would say when it comes to things like the number crunching, looking at how realistic your business is, it's always good to get an external person who has that experience, because they will help you to think outside the box. They will help you to look and see if this is realistic.
Mm.
And they will also tell you what they can see in terms of the forecast. So they will tell you if that is, going to happen or predicted to happen in the next 6 months or 6 years and so forth. So I always say, that number crunching, whether you've started a business already or you haven't, I always say bring on the experts, because they will really help you to look at the figures, very severely, because it's crucial. Anything that we do when it comes to business, let's be honest, at the end of the day, we're there to turn our passion into profit, but it's the figures that are going to make you sustain. And one thing that I've learned over the last, nearly 2 decades in business is that cash flow is king and queen and prince and princess. So you need to make sure that you have enough cash. And this is where I see loads of businesses struggle, because they may get the funding, but
Mm.
they don't get no business for 3 months because it's not the right season. They've just started out, and all they're doing is spending. And I always say the easiest way to look at it is when you go and do your weekly shopping, for some strange reason, you budget £50 and you always seem to spend more. A lot of people are like that. You've got this budget and you never really get, you never really go under your budget. You're normally over, you
Mm.
know. And so you need to make sure that you have enough money and you have enough cash, because cash flow is the bloodline, really, the lifeline of keeping that business going when it may be quiet. And I would say another thing that I would give as well with the cash flow is when you're doing your business plan, the marketing, the sales, business is a cycle. Every single part is important. From the sales to the social media to the marketing to the software you're using to the product you're producing to, whether you're in a supply chain, whether it's a service business, every single part of that cycle is important. I always see business as a pie chart. We've got a round circle and just share everything equally, because everything needs to be done. If you don't have sales, then you can't have marketing. If you don't have marketing, you can't have sales. If you haven't got cash flow, then you can't have a business. And if you don't have cash flow, then you're not going to have, money to do marketing, and all of these things produce your product. So it's very important that you've got a good, understanding of your cash flow and how much cash flow you would need over time.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And just going back to what you said about, you may not have money coming in for 3 months because you haven't made any sales. In your opinion, when you are going for funding, should you be careful and just go for what you need, or is it good to sort of go for more than you need and have a bit of a safety blanket?
Yeah, I always say add a little bit more. Always have to have an extra buffer for those incidental costs that we don't know, is coming. Also, as well, we don't know, everything is a prediction, and you can never, I mean, I'm not saying, if you're going for 25,000, go for another 25,000. That's just a bit, that's not realistic, but maybe go for like 3 to 5% more just in case, and again, it depends on the interest rates you're getting. It
Mm.
depends on when you're going to pay it back. It depends on a number of factors, and that's why I say everyone's on a case by case basis. But again, look at the industry. How long does it take? I've got people that want to start up something within the care industry. With the care industry, you have to go and register with CQC. If you want to look after children, you're going to have to register with Ofsted. These things take quite a lot of time. They can take up to 3 months, 6 months, and all that time you're running that business in whatever form or shape, it's costing, it's running. There's a running cost. Business is like a running tap. As soon as that tap turns on, as much as you want to turn it off, um, you might be able to, kind of regulate the pressure in terms of the water that's coming out, but it doesn't stop. It's a running tap. So
Yeah,
you need to be able to turn it on and understand that this tap's going to be running and you cannot stop it at any time. So you need to really have a plan, or you can stop it, but that's not going to be good for you in terms of running out of cash, or not having the right resources and tools in place. And as well, there might be demand for your business and then you can't cope. So there's lots of things to think about, really.
mm, mm. Brilliant. Yeah, lots to think about there. So, any final tips that we haven't touched upon?
um I think my final tip would be no business is ever the same.
Mm,
Bear that in mind. Do your research before you start.
yeah.
You have to make business fun. And that's why it's always good to choose something that you like doing. There's
Yeah.
no point in saying, right, I want to make money, so I want to do a business, and you go and do the worst kind of set up the worst business ever because you want to make money. Because every morning when you wake up, you're going to be like, I do not like this business. When you read about most successful entrepreneurs, they do it out of passion, they do it out of something they love. So even when it does feel like it's going wrong at times, they would still go, no, we're going to do this. We're really determined because we can see a light at the end of the tunnel, but we need to basically be able to make business fun. We need to enjoy business, even though you're, creating jobs, you're making a difference to the economy, you're doing what you love, but it needs to be fun. If it's not fun, then business is not for you.
Yeah. 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 Very good tip to end on. Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you. That's been lots of food for thought there. So obviously all Mavis's details are below the video. And if you need any further help, feel free to get in touch with Mavis. So all I have to say is thank you. So thank you, Mavis.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for having me.